Economics of prosperity cannot be talked about and leave out the institution of property rights. Today in Liberteach Africa series, the segment of justice and property rights, we have a very distinguished guest, and that is Mugabi John Socrates, the Director of Action for Liberty and Economic Development. We are going to be talking about the issue of property rights, the issue of free markets, and how can these really bring to the economic prosperity of Africa. Mugabi John, welcome to Liberteach Africa series show.
Thank you very much, Liberteach Coordinator, Director, and African Justice Media.
Okay. Now, before we go into the discussion, we want to first congratulate you for making it legal, your marriage. Welcome back from that, process.
Yeah, thank you very much. As you know, marriage is one of the most interesting adventures, but we are so grateful, and even I wish you to follow my footsteps next year.
You did.
That's what I'm wishing you to. But thank you for the support and the prayers.
You did great with Shiva, but let's leave that conversation and get straight to today's conversation. Today's conversation is about a libertarian perspective on how countries could grow, using the institution of property rights and the institution of free markets. As a libertarian, we are talking about the libertarian perspective. How do you think this country could grow on a basis of free market trade and on the basis of property rights, the two institutions?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a very great and important topic as people who are pushing for the development of Africa, for prosperity, and even for having freedom. The most important institution so far, not even in Africa, but in particular in our country, is the institution of property rights, which gives people incentives according to their efforts to own, to transfer, and even to store their value. So it's one of the institutions which is very key, and we envisage this institution in terms of the ownership of land, in terms of transacting the land, and also in terms of how you transfer the right of ownership from one generation to the other. How do you get out the value when you feel like you are in a challenge or you have a problem? And when we talk about development or creating wealth, the land and also the properties must be put at the front line, because we know very well that land is capital, and we also know very well that land in Africa is part and parcel of respect, because it is transferred from one. For example, if you have a father and he worked at a certain time, he acquired a property, he must be able to transfer that property if he wishes. If he wants to sell part of it and meet his obligation, he has to do that. But we have our institution of property right has been having some challenge. It has been very weak that you may own a land, but you may not have total control over it. The control, the ownership is shared between either the traditional institution or also between the government. So at any point, the value of your asset, the value of your property keeps on reducing. But that one comes due to the weak laws which do not buffer the property rights institution to be strong. For example, if the land registration today, which we have in Ghana, the land registration is a bit very weak, and it requires an individual who owns land to go and register his land, maybe at the district, and even turn it into a land title. It's a small ownership. It takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of bureaucracy, and it also takes sometimes corruption. And there is an issue of land grabbing sometimes or undervaluing people's property, because that institution is not well fitted into the society. You are not able to get a land title even if your father left for you land within 2 months without big money or without talking to the person in power or corrupting your way out, because the bureaucracy is so big. So that one undermines even investment of the country, because we have many people who want to invest into certain areas, for example here in Entebbe, but when they think of where am I going to put my investment,
Should I buy land? Then when they think about land, then the problem comes in, because you will buy land with your money, but still you will not be the total owner. So when time comes for selling, you sell land just through agreement, not having all this.
Okay. Now, when we talk about property rights, do we only mean the land, or there are other property rights that should be focused on? Because there is intellectual property.
Yeah.
How do we really bring a diverse issue of properties, not just focusing on land? All land is the most.
Land has been very, very paramount in Africa, but when property rights is big, even your produce, for example, if you're in agriculture, you produce your crops, you must have the ownership to take that crops into the market and even determine its price. There must not be someone to come in and act as a third party to determine which price, to determine which amount, rationing, and so forth. So we talk also about other property, but also when we talk about also other special gifts maybe, which turn into value in the community. When it comes to intellectual property rights, here, for example, if you're a good singer, you produce your music, there must be an incentive in the community. There must be the laws which are going to protect what you produce, and then to give the total custodian to it, unless when you want to give it to maybe a recording company or the other. But that one also translates into value, because if it is well protected, the laws cover you and give total ownership. You are able to sell it, not someone to pilot it, to steal it, or to do what. So that one is also one of the element of property rights, or the tenets of property rights, which can come in with intellectual property rights. But also we look at other things you also produce with your abilities, with your energy, and also what you invest in.
Okay, thank you. Now, on the same issue of the properties, what is the responsibility of the person who owns that property? What should you do? Do you have the right to do anything you want with your property? Do you have the right to refuse people to come and use or trespass or anything? How are you going to use your property?
One, if you, as you've said, if it is your property, it's your property. You determine how to use it. You determine whom to give. Even if you want to give it to someone for free, it's your property. So it must be, its boundary must be determined by you, and there must be a law which covers and even defend you with your property, what it is, where it ends, the quantity or the quality of it, so that no one trespasses through it. So it remains you, and you remain with the right. That's what we call the property right. The right to determine how best you want it to be utilized. Okay.
When do you think that property rights should be taken away from you? Because even the Constitution has both derogable, the 1995 Ugandan Constitution has both derogable and non-derogable rights. Because there are those rights that can be taken away in times of emergency, in times of there is a state of emergency. They can take away some rights, but the right to life cannot be taken away from you, from any human being. But when do you think these rights should be taken, or they should not at any time?
Yeah, we have what they call sometimes eminent laws, which gives people in authority power to take from you your property when they deem, according to their understanding, that you are not using it for the good purpose, or you are not going to use it as they want. For example, if you have a piece of land, the government wants the road to pass there. They will, sometime if we have authorities which don't respect property rights, they will not come into negotiation, because there is no any situation which allows the government or any force to take your property without your consent. The underlining word should be the consent. Even if they are taking it for the good purpose, it shouldn't be forced. It should be you consent to it, and then you say, take it if I want, or I want the value because I worked for it. Or it may be something hereditary. You have to protect it. So what is, if I lose it?
But there are some people who are selfish. They do not want you to take their land, even if it's going to be something that is beneficial.
What
for them, they just don't want.
Selfishness, it is their value to that property. If you value so much something, you will defend it. And selfishness,
Without
also,
giving logical reasons as to why. I
no.
just say, I want it like that.
the best logic is to see that your property remains yours. Is there any logic which can defy that? The best logic is to see that your shirt, you defend it and it remains yours, even if there is a person who needs it there as good cause, you are the one to consent.
In other words, one person is hindering the development of the whole community because you own a property. Maybe you do not want the government to construct a road there, so you're hindering the whole district, the development of the whole district.
Very good question.
Because of selfishness.
I believe the
I was saying that the system which we enacted,
where people are just given partial ownership or are just rendered in. They render ownership to you until when someone feels like I need it. I will give you many examples of people who have settled on land, buy it from someone, and then they sell it, and then another one sell it, but that another one is referred now to a generation, 3 generations back. They are the owner. So the system compromises, and the system does not grant, if you buy your land, it does not grant you the full ownership. So it becomes a problem. And in Entebbe, most of the land here we have, I may say, it's the mile, but also it's between the governments. Partly the government, you own it, partly, until when government feels like we need to use it. So when you are buying land in Entebbe, in most places, you buy with the consent of the LOC, even if he does not own that land, but his signature is very key. And we have leaders who have taken advantage. They are leaders, they are chairpersons. But what they do, they sign on this person who is buying, then the second buyer they also sign. So at the end of the day, conflict arises. Someone say, I paid.
And no one is to hold them accountable.
Yeah. And then what holds them accountable? It should be the law, but some people can bypass the law. So what comes next is we who understand the health of the society, what property rights mean, and how dangerous it is, because it can cause a war. Land can cause war. We come in and seek for justice for these people. We tell them that it is better to now start seeking for proper land registration into the district, the ministry, and then you get the land title.
So in actual sense, the 1935 Mvujolo, the Busuro, and what the president is saying, he wants to get rid of the Milo land and forgetting the 19 of Ghana agreement. Do you think it's right, or it will rather intensify the war about land?
Yeah, the challenge we have there is politics at play. Politics determines law sometimes. Law is the relative of whatever of the politics, so it becomes a problem. But what I think as a country, it's the highest time to call and even demand, and even our leaders, the members of parliament, create laws which respect property rights, so that we don't carry the problem to the next generation and generation. The laws we are having today did not solve, but they carried. My grandfather faced the same problem we are discussing today. My father the same, and me now, their grandchild is discussing the same, and the grandchild now wants it to end. And then if I own a piece of land, I'm able to sell it fully because I bought it fully, and then all transfer it to my children.
Okay, the director of Action for Labor and Economic Development seems so informed about land issues and so experienced about what is on ground in Entebbe municipality. Now, let's go for a short break and come back as we connect these stories. Back from that short break, we are still discussing with the Director of Action for Liberty and Economic Development, Mr. Mugabi John, Socrates, on the same segment of justice in property rights, the liberteach Africa series, the program by African Justice Media. Now, John, getting back to you, what you've tried to elaborate more about the property rights, the property rights institution and how it leads to prosperity, to the economics of prosperity. Could you also try to relate the institution of free market and its relation to prosperity, because you were libertarian, that libertarian perspective?
Thank you very much, Mr. George Kanyehamba, for that. And it's very, very, very paramount for us whenever we are discussing about the prosperity which we are seeking as a country and a continent, to remember that market is very key. But market is not only a market, but it must be free. And free market will mean an arrangement where the buyer and the seller all win. It's a win-win situation where you are able to voluntarily exchange value for value, not value for poison. So everyone wins in a market arrangement.
Someone might value poison.
Yes, okay. Someone might value poison, but we shall not discuss negative liberty and so forth here. But what I mean by a market in Africa or in our country, if we are going to develop, the market institution must be left free. By free, I don't mean it must be without laws. The law must be applicable.
Free of charge?
No, I don't mean free of charge. I mean it must not have the third party to intervene. We must not have force in it. It must be voluntary exchange. And I'm also meaning, when I say free market, that you are able to think of what you can produce, but you are not going to give it for free if you want. If you don't want, if you want for free, that is it. Your satisfaction will be what you achieve. But you take it to someone and say, this is the value I want. Then you negotiate with that person, and then you are able to get the value, and is also able to get the value. But now, as we conclude this topic, the institutions of market here, of free market, they have been interwoven so much by government, what I call interventions. And these interventions have denied people to make goods cross border, however much soldiers cross for war. But goods don't cross for value from the other side, and now they are in Congo. But we should build our institution of market where you are able to trade. There is free trade on the border with the Kenyans, because Kenyans have what you don't have, and you have what they don't have. So you exchange that value, and that value creates a very peaceful operation which enables you to grow and grow, because peace is key. And then it also helps in innovation, because you know whenever you produce value, there is someone who like it. But
most people claim that Uganda is a capitalist country. Uganda is a free market country. Why is it that we still have a lot of poverty and we are not growing, we are not going anywhere in terms of prosperity?
Yeah, we don't. Uganda, you know how in 1990 Uganda opened up the market. However much it opened, we appreciate it opened up. But still the government remained with a very big hand in it. For example, you go and you want to trade. The tax which you imposed on all the exports and imports are determined by government. They are not determined by the buyer and seller. It's the government. Then we also have price controls. In some aspects, we have people calling for prices. You remember, that's a big debate, I don't want to go into it. You remember when COVID hit, many people said government should control the price of medicine and whatever. We have also that. We have also where right now, the minimum wage, what they call the most dangerous policy as far as the economy is concerned and creation of jobs, the minimum wage is being now taken over by government. And minimum wage discourages you as an investor to employ few people. If you want to employ many, you will say, okay, there is a law which gives me this, let me employ few. Then sometimes the economy gets destroyed. The incentives of innovation all die.
That was John Mugabi, the Director of Action for Liberty and Economic Development. If you are someone who loves economics, issues of prosperity, economic development, then you have to listen to this man. Because sometimes I'll come back to him and discuss the same issues. But let's end this discussion here. You have been good viewers. Don't forget to subscribe to African Justice Media YouTube channel. Let's meet in the next episode. My name is George Justice Kanyehamba, and I was your host.